Okay, so welcome back to the series. This is the first part of this double build that we're going to be doing here. So we've got the Henschel 33 D1 in 1/35 scale from ICM. We've also got the Flak that's going to be going with it as well. So that's the Flak 18, which is the AFV Club kit. So we're going to have the Henschel towing this one. We'll get to that one probably in the next episode. Whereas at the minute I want to sort of focus on this one. Now I haven't actually looked at this one. I haven't got it out the bag, so not sure what to make of it. I know it's ICM's, one of ICM's earlier kits. I've got the sort of typical box there. And a great big bundle of sprues. And it is the older style decals there as well, which aren't the best. I've tried them in the past. I do find them a little bit, you wouldn't probably want to use them. You can see the white's a little bit out there. But again, we don't need any of these anyway, just some of these instrument dials, which I may use, or I may have a look in the spares box. But the plastic is fine. So that's the good news. ICM have come on leaps and bounds. I mean, I've just got their Model T, which is one of the new ones, the armoured car, and you've got the new type of decals. A little bit heavy on the carrier film, but far improved on print quality and all the rest of it. So you just got to watch out on some of the older kits. Now what we got here is you've got the great big cargo bay and the sidewalls. I'm just looking for injector pins. Now this was the problem. I knew they were going to be here. They're on the outside, it looks like, and no, they're on the inside. They're on the inside, so I am going to want to take care of these. I'm hoping some of them are raised, so they're just sand down. That's quite an indented one there, but there we go, we'll get around it. You see how soft, plastic's quite soft, surprisingly, so I want to watch that as well. Now, ICM, on most of their trucks, and this is no exception, you get absolutely everything. So you've got to build the chassis up, you've got a full engine, everything in their transmission, exhausts, the whole lot underneath here. So it is a very well detailed model. You've got to build all of this as well, which does worry me a little bit, that that's actually how you build the axles. Is that right? Axles? Must be. They're actually, you're going to have to square those up. So, I mean, this isn't for the faint-hearted. I usually look through this and decide what I'm going to add based on how much I'm going to see. However, looking at this, like for instance, I mean, there's no real point building a lot of that engine unless you're going to look from it underneath or open up one of the cabs, one of the bonnet doors. What is that called when you split a bonnet? What must be a bonnet? You know, you can open it one half or the other half. Probably have a look at. We'll have a look at that. See if we can actually do that and keep it open. Sorry, to be able to place it there and then open it and close it and open it and close it. Not sure. Might be able to work something out there. Certainly is a in-depth build, isn't it? And then building up the cargo deck there. Again, plenty going on all the way through it. So there we go. So let's look at stage one. Where are we? Right. Well, hoo-wee. This is going to be quite the in-depth build. There you go. This is when you do stuff blind. It's surprising how well detailed this one is. Now, what we've got to do here is actually make up, what's that? Is that the engine block or transmission? So we've got the engine block to make up, which is on this sprue. And this is where all the engine parts are. And then we're straight onto the chassis, which is not on this sprue. And then at all of the gubbins underneath there as well, for the axles, the whole lot underneath there is all on this sprue as well as all of the individual bits on the side. Okay, so that's fine. So this makes up well, what I would describe as all of the tricky bits. We've actually got the chassis framing there as well. I am amazed at just how flexible this is. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's get on and cut some plastic out. So I'm not sure I'm going to do this. I am intending not to build much off camera. I'm certainly going to edit it and cut out all my ums, ahs and sniffing. But for the most part, I'll be looking to pretty much just build this and kind of talk to an imaginary audience, which then leads me on to the next bit. So if anyone has any questions related to anything, doesn't need to be related to this series, but you post them underneath these videos, I can then look and then answer them in the next video. So I'm not sure if I have any wise information to share with anyone, but if you've got any questions, always wanted to ask me a question, feel free to stick it down below and I'll do my best to answer it in the next video. I've got myself lost now because I'm not looking at numbers. I'm waffling on. I did warn you that there will be quite a lot of waffling. 97. We've got to 96. Well, here we go. There we go. This actually reminds me of the Famo that I used to always build. I'm sure I've said this before, but I had 3 Famos in my time. Enough to pull a tiger, believe it or not. Which is the, if you don't know, it's the great big half track that Tamiya make, SDKFZ 9. And used to get it for Christmas when I was quite a lot younger. I think we tried it when I was like 14. Tried it again when I was about 16. And then that was it. And then when I moved in here, I've still got the trailer. This is going off as... Anyway, we'll go with it. So I've still got the trailer that comes with it. You get the SDAH 116, which is topical for Spanish Civil War because the 115 was there, which Dad's work have now done. So these are the tank transporters. And anyway, so with the Famo, I'd failed twice, so I decided to grab one again when I moved in here and got it myself, and actually did build it. And it's very much like this because you've got all of this same sort of detail, and the chassis is actually built up in a similar way, so it's very reminiscent of that. And that was a long way round to explaining that. I'm getting lost again in these numbers. It's absolutely bizarre. There is an awful lot of small bits here. God dear, if you're thinking about having a go at this kit, you might want to decide just how serious you are about it. 18, god dearie me. This is just for the engine block. We haven't got into the difficult bits yet. I'm going to need to start crossing things off, I think, otherwise I'm going to get in a complete muddle. So I think we'll put the first cut in here. Okay, so I've just been cleaning these parts up, and everything's looking a bit better now. There was some nasty sprue gates on this, which actually went in here underneath that lip and incorporated the lip. It was a whole thing, so I just cut that out and sanded it back. But there we go. So the first thing is actually glue these two parts together. So I like to use this Tamiya extra thin, the quick setting, and for something like this I actually tend to sort of pin it like that between the clamp and then miss totally and run extra thin down the wrong seam. Just run it along like that, and where we got that gap there at the end, I like to actually just pop it in there, and that will find its way through. So if you sort of let go and then pop it back on, It's just to avoid that sometimes very useful part, which is when you actually glue something and then you squeeze it and all the melted plastic comes out. I don't want that here. I will want it when I join these two, so that's a bit of a different join, but we actually want that thin kind of blade like pressed metal there. So that's enough to sort that. And yes, it being what I thought, being the soft plastic like it is, really doesn't take much. So the Tamiya extra thin really sorts that out, and then we've actually, just to get that to come together at the back, we do need to press that down a little bit. That's doing that in a different way. We want to get this join now. So it's a weird thing, but you know, you just got to kind of do whatever feels right, I guess. I just didn't want the liquid plastic around that press metal there. The rest of it's okay. Got an ejector pin there on the top. That's a raised one, so that will come off easily. Right, there we go, that's that bit. Now we need to get this part together. Now this is a bit different because there's no locating pins, and we do kind of want a seamless join, so I tend in this situation just to get it slightly off like that, run the extra thin down, then push it back in. Then I know it's all over the mating surface. Now you can't do that once you've done it once, you can't do it the other side, so just run that down the inside, and then we've got a gap up here which is nice, so that means this will all wick its way right the way down the join, and then we actually want to get that liquid plastic to actually push through. So I just put the clamp on and squeeze it, and again it's quick settings, so you need to work a little bit quickly. And that's got enough of it coming out. We've got quite a lot down the front there and down the back. Just making sure it's lined up now. Yeah, that's looking alright. And then I'll leave that to actually harden, and then here you can just sand that and it should be seamless, more or less. Good enough for as far as this is concerned. So that's those bits. We've got the belt here for the front, and I've snapped one bit off, which isn't a problem, so I've left this just so I can show you. I'm actually going to cut that off and probably just put a piece of Tamiya tape, cut a thin bit of Tamiya tape on the Infinity cutting board, and just put it around and down into where it needs to go. I actually think this goes straight into there. Doesn't actually go around this cog, it kind of goes into nowhere there, which makes it a little bit tricky in this doing it. It's a lot easier to actually put tape around, for instance, but it looks like it goes into a housing there. So I might actually use plasticard, something like that. It'll be easy enough to work out. So that's one little modification we've got to do. And then we've got these other bits here. So there is plenty of mould lines running around all of this, but once that's all sanded, it comes up very clean, and that creates the first stage. So really we've got to let these bits just dry off, and then we can sand that off, and then we actually get, what's the first bit? This bit goes in there. So we've got this bit that joins there sticking out. Does it? Hang on a minute. I'm not sure that's totally right. No, it goes like that. There you go. It goes sticking up on there like that. We've got a bit sticking up there, and then we've got some other tubes, and I don't know what they are. There's no explanation for what any of this is. 1939 to 42. We need to do... Oh, that's paint. B. Okay, fair enough. That just means German grey or Dunkelgelb. Right, we can ignore that. So we've got this bit, and that bit joins on to this bit. Right. Yes, it is a very complicated build, this, I must admit, so far. But we get that bit joins on there. And then we get this bit Oh, is that literally just a butt joint? It looks like it's just a butt joint on there, like that. Well, that's going to be a bit tricky to get that to stick. It's all very delicate stuff, this. This is just like, what would you call that? It's half and half to make up a circle. But it's such a small mating surface. I mean, that's never gonna... This is quite a large part this is trying to hold on to. Yeah, I might drill and pin that as I'm going to all this trouble. Although it might come good because we've got another bit here which joins on to the underside. Actually goes there as a sort of support. So it might be that I get these bits on first. It's all very shallow. We've got some pins and we've got some very shallow holes and shallow pins. They're not really picking up at all there, actually. No, it goes there. Oh, this is very confusing. Ah, right, and it's this bit goes down there. Right, so oh dear. Yeah, this is a tricky one. This is a tricky one. Right, I'll have a tinker about with this and then we'll come back with this all glued up one way or another. Okay, so I've cleaned this up now off camera a little bit and it's all looking much better. Got rid of that ejector pin mark there as well, just swipe that down with a sanding stick. And we've also got the seams sorted on here. I just need to buff that back a little bit. What I find, I tend to use the Flory sanders for actual seam work to try and get through and level off. So here there's a bit of misalignment, so you almost get a step happening. So I like to use one of these rigid sticks to actually get through that, and I particularly prefer the green one, which tends to have the right sort of grip for me. Then there is simply nothing better than the Infinity sanding sticks. Now I was looking at this one, and this here I've had getting on for 3 years. I've got another, they come in a pack of 2, so I got a brand new one I haven't used, and I was sent another set, and I mean, look at it. You wouldn't even know it was really more than, well, a month old. I use this all the time, and in fact it's worn a little bit down on the grit, so it's actually not quite 1,000. It's almost a bit better. So what I tend to do, this leaves sanding marks, these ones. So when we got that, I tend to come in with 1,000 just to kind of take out any of the marks. And what I'm talking about here, I don't know if you can see that at all, but there's a bit of roughness there where I haven't cleaned it up. So I then tend to just go over with 1,000, which pretty much takes all the sanding marks out, and then the 1,500 is the absolute winner. There is nothing better, and that just brings it right up, and it's as smooth as it was before you actually did anything to it. It's as smooth as the initial plastic. And then of course you can go even further. You don't need to on something like this, but if you're doing sort of finishing seams, or you even want to buff a bit of paint up, you can start with 1,500, then go on up through to I know I've talked about these to death. You can go on up through to this one as well, but just reiterating, if you haven't used them, they really are excellent. I can't speak highly enough of them. We're not going to go too mad on this. I mean, there is like a sort of seam there that you could put back in. I mean, I'm spending far too much time on this as it is already. So we're going to get ahead now, and it looks like this bit actually just goes on to that top bit. So that ejector pin mark I was talking about was completely pointless getting rid of that, because you're not going to see it. So there we go. So that just plonks onto there. So I think if the join looks alright and we can get to everywhere we need to get to, I think I'm just going to get that glued on now. So this is, again, I'm applying pressure because, again, we don't want any plastic to squeeze out. So you wouldn't want to then put the extra fin in and then squeeze it. is what I'm saying. It's just so that's about bit joined. Now, as we're on a roll, let's get the next bit on. Now, as I'm going to have to place this is where the green top, I suppose they're both green, but I'm going to call that yellow for the sake of argument. So we put the green top on, and then that gives us a bit more play time to place this. You wouldn't have been able to do that with the quick setting. It would have already gone by the time you placed it on there, and then it just falls off. It's very good to have the two. That's looking all right, I think. Right, and then we've got. You're going to need to paint these bits different colours, it looks like, but I'm not going to bother with that. I'm going to do what I can, picking it out by brush. So let's just get these bits stuck on, I think, because I really don't know how much of this you're going to be able to see, and it's simple enough to get in there with a brush and sort these things out. Okay, when you're using Tamiya Extra Thin, keep the fingers out of the way, because it's very easy to get it to wick off onto your fingers, and then you get fingerprints. Now that bar is meant to be sticking out proud like that, just to make the point that is not touching that. It's actually sitting off. So if you press it down, these little brackets, poke it out a little bit like a rail, I suppose, like that. There we go. And learning with Jason, do you know what we've done here? Put that the wrong way around. So, another little hint, tip, whatever you like. If you have stuck something down with Tamiya Extra Thin, and then you need to remove it, especially if you've used the quick setting. If you run around with the slow setting, this should just loosen up the join. And there you go. So we're back off, turn it around, still a bit tacky. Then we've got a fuzzy edge, so we do the same again, and we just run round with the quick setting, remembering to get it clamped down, and that should see all of that right. Now the longer you leave it, the harder that would have been, but I think we got away with that one. So next up, what we have now got is that lovely clean join I had there is now a little bit rough. And we have actually got the one thing I didn't want to do. Some of that beading. But anyway, let's not worry about that. We can scratch that off when it's all dry. The best thing, if you get something like that, just don't touch it. Let it go off. Do it tomorrow. Come back in the morning and you'll just be able to scrape across there with a knife and it'll all be gone. And honestly, it's probably should have something there anyway. You're going to see this. You're going to be looking like that. That's pretty much what you're going to see. That much. So there you go. Let's not over agonise these things, Jason. Come on. That's what the whole point of this bloody series was, wasn't it? God dear, rivet counting myself. That's the trouble, you see. That's how we do it. That's how we do it. Right. So let's get this next little bit on. I do find these brushes pick up a little bit too much sometimes. So it's always less is more with this stuff. Now these shallow locating holes, I don't know if they're going to cause us an issue or not. That looks okay. Again, that's the little lever at the back, whatever that is sitting off. That looks okay, that's alright. We can deal with that. Now, then we've got this bit, which goes there. Let's get that on as well. Yeah. I don't know how I feel about these shallow. What's worrying me is I've got the Henschel 126 by same sort of vintage of ICM kit, and I fancy that. It just doesn't look quite like some of the ones I've built, and I know it isn't. I know it's going to be tricky, and that's quite a plane to have to deal with. Large parasol wings, so similar sort of thing. So I'm starting to realise that that's going to be maybe a bit difficult. Right, now let's get that bit on, and then I think we'll call it there for a moment and let this dry off, because we're going to need to get bits joining on to all of these parts that I've just attached to the side of this engine block. So because of that, I want to get them, make sure they're mated correctly, and God blimey, this isn't even the first step. Deary me, I'm getting into a mess. This is the shallow. See, if they were just a little bit deeper, you'd get rid of all this sort of vagueness. Now I'm having to use the extra fin to sort of just melt it on there and in the right place, hopefully, and that isn't the right place, I don't think. It's not getting a flush join into the side. It's gone totally now. Oh, I think I'm not in the right place. Well, I'm just guessing now. So what we want to do with that is we can line it up with these bits, because we know that that wants to sit there. Hedge trimmers going past again. Oh, where are we? Right. Tricky little thing, this, isn't it? So it's going to need to sit in there. Somewhere like that. Right, okay. I think the long short of it, I've just found out there, is it doesn't really matter where it is. And when I was saying about this join here to these two bits, we've now added the this bit, this sort of shelf, so that's going to just cradle it where it needs to be, so we don't need to worry about the join between this bit and that, and we can use that semi-circle to square it up so it looks like that pipe just wants to be straight down, so something like that. So we're just using the semicircle there. We want to have that horizontal so that the next bit joins onto it. So I'm going to go ahead and get that done. So that's this bit here. So let's just get that glued on, and then whilst we're all kind of drying, we can then square this bit up to it. That's my plan. I need to get my other hand now. So only I had 3. Right, something like that. So what the hell am I'm going to have to be a bit... Right, so we're going to need to put a little bit in there just to tack that down, so that then we can actually manoeuvre it into position and get it all squared up right. There we go. Hopefully this is coming across and you see what I'm doing. So let's get the join in there sorted. So that's like that. That's worked. Okay. Now that actually wants to be upright, like that. Let's get a little bit more of the extra fin under there, just to let that move around. So I'm just trying to get those, whatever these bits are, they want to be sticking up vertical and sort of square to it all. Now that is a lot there's a lot we've done there, but I don't think it's too bad when you come to think about it. It's more daunting. It looked more daunting than it was, I think. Okay, I think we'll leave it there and sort out the next bits. Okay, so the next part's finish this off. So we've got all of that side sorted, and just to make sure this one, because of the fixing points, I've just added a bit of super glue there so I don't knock it, give it a chance for the rest to go off. Put on the wheel where the belt goes round. So now we're just on this side. So the first thing, again, all of this is going to be different colours, but I've got a feeling the whole engine is pretty much sprayed black. So yeah, we'll go with that for the minute. Going back to the green top, I'm just going to put a small dab in those two holes just so we can align this. So we have to put this on in this sequence. So again, making sure it's sitting out how we want it. Something like that. If you're using stuff like this, where you know it's easy to knock it and it's going to take a while for it to go off, you can actually use super glue. It's no problem, especially for these sort of areas. I'm not, but simply because I'm doing it on camera, but I probably would otherwise, but I have to get quite a lot involved to have super glue around here. Cocktail sticks and all that, and there's too many moving parts for the camera, if that makes sense. So I'm going to make a mistake. So this is then the exhaust. This will be a different colour, but we can sort that out come the final reckoning with chalks, pastels and that sort of thing. Then we've got two holes underneath there on the side, and that is where we get these. So I've made one up. I don't know what these would be. You see them on engines. Who knows what? Let me know in the comments below if it's a recognisable part of an engine. Now, the way that goes in, I fancy that is going to be a super glue job after saying all that. So, let's I'll just do it a bit differently. Because I've got to make up another one, so I'll just do the one. So I'll put a tiny little dab of super glue in there. And then, because we want to get everything aligned, I'll make sure it's right like that, and then we want to center it that way, and it's already starting to go off. This is the problem. And then from looking down as well, and that way we want to make sure it's sort of sitting out. So now, because I've moved that super glue, sorry, cocktail stick in my mouth, because I've moved that super glue as it's been going off, I've got the tackiness, but it's not going to hold it. Well, it's going to hold it, but it's not going to fix it there. And then we can use Tamiya Extra Thin, and that will seal any of the parts where the super glue isn't. It'll actually melt the plastic together. I think that's sort of okay. Something like that. I don't think that cylinder is quite on straight on the top there, which is throwing it off, but as long as it looks right-ish, we won't worry about that. I think again, you get the part like this, and then you glue the cylinder head on. I think it's better to actually attach that and then glue the cylinder head on when it's on the actual bit. So as I've done this with super glue, I think I might just see if I can just snap that off there. So let's get that square first, let that set, and then we can glue that on. So I'll get that second one done, and then we're on to the chassis. Okay, and now you'll be happy to know that this brings the engine block to an end. And what I've done there is cut some tape just on my trusty Infini easy cutting mat. So that's 1 mil, and I just cut a little hole, because it'd be a lot easier if you had something for it to go round, then you could just go round and up, but it's not. There's an actual block of plastic here. So all I've done is just cut a slit on both sides, put a dab of super glue, put the end of that tape in, pulled it taut around, and then nipped it so it's the right size, and glued it in there, and it's okay. I think it should probably be out to the side a little bit more, not quite like that, but again, we ain't going to worry about that. Gets us out of a tricky spot. We got those, I'm going to call them cylinders, because I got nothing else to call them. They're on now as well, and they're all sorted, and that is the engine block complete, apart from the fan, which just pops in front of that the belt, and it's got a little sink mark in the front, so I've just put a bit of super glue there. So once that's, I'll just leave that overnight because it's a great big dollop of it. We'll just sand that flush, and then that just pops on there. Hang on, where are we? It just goes on straight on there, like that. That completes the engine. So now we're into the multi-part. Okay, so we've got the same level of complexity or detail, depending on how you want to look at it. So what we're actually dealing with here is to make up the chassis, we get the side parts there. So the side bars go along like this, so you get two of these, which pretty much make up the length of the truck. And then you join them together with parts like this. So you glue it in like that, kind of square it up at the bottom, make sure it's square, and then join the next bit on. And then when you've got them all in and they're all together, you should have a pretty well squared up chassis. Now there are ways that can create a problem, and you can let problems in from that. And also there is quite a bit of cleanup. So as we've been saying, again, this is the older style of ICM. So as we get it off the sprue, we've pretty much got a seam line running all the way down there where the mould is a little bit, it's not quite mating correctly, so we've got to square it up. We've got this all the way down there, that line there is not meant to be there. Quite large ejector pin marks as well, they're not them, but that is there. It's nothing too much of a problem, but we want to get that off as well. So I've cleaned up one. Also, just to keep myself sorted, I tend to do this when we're using complex things. I've just scratched in on the inside there 20, so that I know that this is part 20 and then the other one is the other one. And I've only cut off this part, which I know goes with 20 because I'm working with 20. Now, this is quite vague on the face of it, but when you actually look into it, it's not. So this is just a bar that in the instructions just seems to sit somewhere here and hangs over the back. But actually when we get these middle spacers here and here, they've got a little lug on top, which then that slots into those indents. And then we've got some other like wire frame, A-frame type jobs, which slip up around and clamp onto it. So on the face of it, you look at the instructions and there's arrows going through all sorts of things, and it doesn't really explain it, but you've just got to kind of work through it, and it all comes good in the end. So really the way to do this is we've got a front and a back spacer, which are quite different. So this is A41, this is up the front there. So I think what I'm going to do is clean that one up and then get that one joined, and then get the back one joined here and square that up between the two so that they're where we want them to be, like that, and then go ahead and systematically work down, bringing the two sides together, because we've got a bit of flex, and again using the tiniest bit of Tamiya extra thin, as we saw before. If we need to realign it, we can just undo it a little bit, ease it out and put it back together. So all of this has got cleanup with all of these seam lines. And they actually in this scenario cause issues. So we've got seam lines running along there and on the flat spot, which needs to be totally flat. So what I'm going to do is clean all these bits up, and then we'll come back once I've actually joined this chassis together at the front and the back, because I think it's going to be too difficult to do on camera. And then we'll go through the middle, joining all of those in, and then try and get these spars on at the back. Right, so checking back in with this one, I've gone ahead and cleaned up all of these. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in there, and they're just placed in there at the minute. I have scribed the numbers into the end, but I didn't actually think they sit in there quite as well as they have. So what I'm going to do is I'll just show you. They literally got flat ends, and you just kind of tease them in, and then they square up the chassis for you. So I'm going to actually just touch that now with a bit of extra fin down on each one. This is the slower setting one again, the green top, and that should give us enough time to make sure everything's where we want it to be. So I'll do both sides. Sure there's quite enough there. And now, just making sure that they're all squared up as best I can do. Something like that. It's a little bit gappy. That's more where I've sanded them and it's not quite square, I think. So just checking on this profile. Make sure they're sitting up where they want to be. I imagine the cargo deck is going to sit on some of these. So I want it to be pretty flat across the top there. Then we've got these parts that I mentioned before, and we've got those little nibs on the top there. And it's actually quite a good join there, to be honest. I was quite surprised. So that's another piece we can go on and put on at this stage. Again, just trying to make sure we've got enough time to get it all square, so I'm using the traditional extra fin there. I'll start with this one first, not to touch it because it is still wet, so I'll actually just use the tweezers just to move that in. Now I imagine it's quite vague. I don't know where it's really meant to be, whether or not it's meant to be on the actual flush with the outside edge. It looks like that's where it's trying to go. Yeah, I think it is. So we'll just get that where it needs to be. Check it again. It's a little bit off. I'm pretty sure when whatever this joins, this looks like where the cargo deck actually goes, that we'll be able to sort that out and sort of maneuver it. Now looking down it as well, does look to be quite true now and square, because these two parts were kinking in a bit in places. It looks alright. Yeah, I think that's alright. So we've just got a few other small bits to put on now. These little brackets go on here, and they seem to just the top edge, and they seem to sit below the line. So I think what I'm going to do is put them on afterwards, once we've got some wheels on or something, or an axle that actually gives us the height. So we'll put this other beam on now, and then we're on to the parts that start to make this actually look like the base of a truck. It should start coming together now. We're about to turn the first page. God, don't you hate it when that happens? It always happens to me. Right, let's get that back. Just be. I think you can see the way we've gone on so far with this. This is perhaps over engineered and maybe even a little bit over ambitious. I'm not sure it needs to be quite designed like this, but nevertheless, you know, it's all here. So if you like your detail, there's not much lacking. What there is, I'm sure it'd be easy enough to put in. That's not square on the bottom. That's my sanding again, I expect. Tend to sort of round edges as opposed to square them off. Okay, I think that's alright. And then we've got these like bracket things, don't know what you'd call it really, that go around the chassis and that bit we just put on. And they do that in specific places, do they? Yes, it's a tiny little notch there. And they go in, you've got this kind of cut edge on that side, and that goes in. And they've got a little hole at the top, so it's not an actual loop. And how on earth are we going to do this? Like that. Okay. It's not a brilliant way of going about that. It kind of splays outwards. They're actually meant to join at the top, but I think we've got a little bit of flash in there, which is meaning that they actually then bend outwards. But it's something like that. Let's see what we can see. There's a little indent on the chassis here to take the bottom of that bracket. I think I'm going to need to clean up the inside, because as you squeeze this, it splays out and it's meant to be quite a lot closer. I'm not going to be able to hold that and glue it. So I'll work that out off camera, and then I think we can move on into the next stage, which is where we've got some foot plates and we're starting to get the front leaf spring suspension for the front tyres. Right, so moved on a little bit with this one. I managed to get these brackets on, which you've got a little indent here, but because of the moulding seam it wasn't straight, so I just cut it and then pushed the bracket on, glued it, and then because it was under tension it just snapped. So that was actually quite good. So these basically were cut in half, pushed up and set into where they want to be, and then kind of joined together at the top, and there they are on the inside. So it might be a little bit wonky, but you know, I don't think that's really an issue. So we've got that done, and I've just started now on the front wheel, sort of, I don't know what you'd call it, it's not really an axle, it's where the leaf springs go, and it starts to build up the front wheel base structure, axle I suppose for want of a better word. So we've got two leaf springs. I've only cut one off, so I know which one's which at the minute, and that actually snaps on there. You can see how good a fit that is. And then we've got these well, wheel mountings. I'm not a mechanic, I'm sure all of these have correct terms, and you've got two bits there. They're sided is what I mean here. Sorry, it's a bit late in the afternoon, I'm getting a bit tired here. So you've got these two bits like that, and you've got to glue these sections on, and they take one of this the sort of steering bar here. So how we go about this is they fit into the arms like that. And it's all straightforward, it's just a little bit tricky is all. You know, you just got to make sure it's all lined up. And then we put this bar on there. Now I don't understand how you would make this turnable. I don't think you can, because it would just fall out. But nevertheless, that is how they get this bar to go on, just on those pegs, and then presumably you touch it and it falls off. So I think you want to set your steering. you want to decide whether you're going to be straight on, steered a little bit or whatever, and then just sort of stick with it and use this as your guide. So that has to obviously fit between the two. So that's your spacer. So that's that coming on. Again, just as complicated and in-depth as the rest of the kit, but not a problem. You can see the fit is not an issue. It's just a little bit over the top. So the next bits that we're on are getting all of this together. So I'm just working on the A sprue at the minute, which caters for all of this in the middle and all of this down here. And now we're going to run on to, it looks like E mainly, but we've got a few other bits. So a few more little bits from the A sprue to go on the side, and then we're straight into getting some more of this on. And as I was saying earlier, it then soon comes together. We are already getting the engine and the firewall in, as well as the lower plate of the actual cab as well, the footwell. And then we're away. So there's not actually that much to go. It's quite a daunting looking kit, but as you get through these 2 pages, which actually aren't that bad considering, although, like, you know, when you see this, look at that. I was just thinking, oh, that's good. You get that as one piece. Well, you could, but you don't. You get it? It's like 5, 6 pieces. So there we go. Nevertheless, once you get through this, we're kind of plain sailing then. Look, we're onto the cab. And then we're on to the cargo deck, and then we're on to the 88mm gun. So a few more bits to go in this part. So I think I'm going to leave this part here as a little bit of an introduction, see how we're going with this, and then obviously you'll see in the next part we'll be well on into the cab, and then probably just bring the cargo deck together and get it all sorted. We're going to need to start painting at some point. I've checked out on the group site, and the base is a sand yellow, so that's fine. I'll have more information on that as we go forward. I just want to check if you guys are happy with me using pictures. So yeah, obviously when we're at this stage, before we get the actual wheels on, this is all going to have to be painted up. The engine's going to have to be painted up, and then we've got the inside of the radiator, the firewall. So we're going to need to do it in sections, the inside of the bonnet as well. I'm going to try and work out how to get that open and closed. So yeah, there might be a way around that. And then as we get up into the cab as well, we've got interior and exterior. So we're going to go sand on all of the interior, and then a green and brown camo over that sand on the outside. So as you can see, 3 stages. This will probably be the last stage of this build, and then we bring the 88 in as well. With the painting, I think I want to probably get the same parts on the 88 up to the same level as well. So we might be bringing that one in next week as well, once we've got the chassis together. I say next week, might be a couple of weeks, but in the next episode. So thanks for staying tuned. Again, if there's anything you want to know, want to ask, any questions, post them in the comments below. I'll pick them up and put them in the next video, and we'll move on from there. So thanks for staying tuned. Hopefully more progress in the next one.